Honorable Minister, dear colleagues, it is my privilege to share some reflections about WHO's position on the scope of patient-doctor relationship with a particular focus on bodily integrity and sexual harassment. My name is Avni Amin. I'm a technical officer at WHO's Department of Sexual and Reproductive Health and Research based out of Geneva. I work on violence against women and girls. I will draw on international human rights standards as they apply to sexual and reproductive health care to women and girls. This is an area of healthcare provision and patient-doctor relationship where ethical principles of bodily integrity are often violated. These principles are codified in international and regional human rights laws and standards. It is important to label the lack of respect for bodily integrity and sexual harassment in the context of patient-doctor relationship as part of a spectrum of mistreatment and abuse in healthcare settings and a failure to meet professional standards of healthcare. In the case of women, this is not only a manifestation of unequal power dynamics between providers who hold medical knowledge and patients who are dependent on the health system to obtain information and care, but also a manifestation of societal unequal gender power dynamics. Evidence shows that mistreatment and abuse in healthcare settings towards women is common in some settings and takes multiple forms. For example, studies by WHO show that mistreatment and abuse of women during childbirth and in provision of reproductive health care ranges from physical abuse, conducting unnecessary examinations, to verbal abuse, including making derogatory remarks, to sexual abuse, including sexual harassment. It also includes other acts that violate bodily integrity and rights, such as denial of care, performing procedures without informed consent, such as forced sterilization, breaking confidentiality of the patients, not supporting women to make informed choices and decisions about their health care, detaining them for inability to pay, or segregating them in health facilities based on gender, racial, age, and other stereotypes and discrimination. Sexual violence is perpetrated against women not only in their homes and by their intimate partners, but also in public spaces. Sexual harassment in workplaces, including the health workplace, between peers and from providers to patient has also been reported in diverse settings, although systematic data on prevalence on a global scale is scarce. In one study in Nigeria of women during childbirth, 2% of them reported being sexually abused by a health worker. A report from Slovakia found that medical personnel often made inappropriate and derogatory remarks to Roma women about how frequently they had sexual intercourse and how they are promiscuous. Mistreatment and abuse by healthcare providers violates a number of specific rights. For example, under the European Convention of Human Rights, pregnant women have the right to obtain information about their health. Similarly, the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture has recognized that health providers who withhold care, perform treatments that intentionally inflict suffering for no legitimate medical purposes, can be considered to be perpetrating cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment. The ILO Convention on Violence and Harassment, which many member states are yet to ratify, require that governments put in place and implement policies to eradicate violence and harassment, including sexual harassment in the workplace. And finally, WHO's guidelines and recommendations have explicitly taken a human rights-based approach to the provision of sexual and reproductive health care in the following ways. For example, in implementing WHO recommendations on the health sector response to violence against women and the WHO Global Plan of Action on Health Systems Response to Violence Against Women and Girls, endorsed by member states at the World Health Assembly, the need for the health workplace to have policies against sexual harassment and for ensuring that health workers do not perpetrate violence both against each other and against WHO and other UN agencies have signed a joint statement on zero tolerance for stigma and discrimination in healthcare settings. This includes supporting accountability and redressal procedures for victims, training of health workers, including in codes of conduct, professional disciplinary proceedings, empowering users of healthcare services to demand their rights, for example, through ombudspersons, patient right charters, community and patient feedback mechanisms, and through national and regional and international human rights courts. States have an obligation to ensure that there is legislation, policies that ensure provision of appropriate services to women and girls, and that women and girls are meaningfully involved and participating in the development of these laws and policies. Patient rights charters and laws that have been developed to protect patients against rights violations have been developed in several countries, including in Slovakia, France, Austria, and Germany. Thank you very much for this opportunity to address this esteemed audience. I wish you well in your deliberations.